Text, New York State E-MDT, NYS Enhanced Multidisciplinary Team Initiative, National Elder Abuse MDT Training and Technical Assistance Center. Facilitating technical issues. This video will cover navigating technology during a hybrid E-MDT meeting.
As an E-MDT coordinator, one of the things that I keep in mind when I'm thinking about going into a meeting, a hybrid meeting that has all of these new tech components to it, one of the things that I'm considering is that I don't need to be the one to fix any of the tech issues that come up, but rather my role is to really provide that facilitation and offer suggestions on how somebody might be able to navigate through some of the challenges they may have.
I think it's also important too to just have a little bit of practice beforehand. So trying out the technology yourself and having some test run meetings, even with some coworkers, just to get a sense of how that technology works so that you're comfortable when you are actually in an actual meeting.
Text, pre-meeting setup.
As far as like table setup, you really want to make sure that you have a clear space, clear open space for the virtual participants. So we like using a U shape, and the screen is at the base of the U, the top of the U, and then having participants around. And that kind of keeps a nice clear flow for eye contact and interaction among team members.
One of the things that we would certainly encourage is, if your budget allows, to be able to add some of that additional equipment so that you are able to have a more effective hybrid meeting, so that the participation from the virtual and the in-person participants feels very similar. We're looking at an external camera, a microphone that's omni or multi-directional, so that you're able to get people from no matter where they are in the room. If you only have one microphone, you might think about, where do your team members sit? A lot of times, I as a coordinator, I'm pretty familiar with who some of my more soft-spoken team members are, and so I may want them closer to the microphone, as opposed to some of my team members that may have more of a booming voice that can be caught easier by that mic, depending on where they're sitting.
I would strongly suggest, one, getting there early, but two, having a test run in the room. So maybe you could have somebody call in and actually test the microphone, test the camera to make sure that things are working, check the connectivity, the Wi-Fi signal, all of those different pieces that are, super important to making that team meeting run smoothly.
Hey, Lindsay. Thanks for coming early. We're in a new room today, so I just wanted to do a little sound check just to see how the sound is. So I'm going to try another part of the room and we'll see how it works. All right, how does it sound?
Test 1 2, test 1 2.
Betsy, you sound really distant. I'm having trouble hearing you.
Okay, let me move the microphone a little bit and see how it works.
Betsy moves the microphone to the center of the U-shaped table.
All right, let me try it again.
Betsy walks around the table.
Okay, Lindsay, test 1 2, test 1 2.
Yeah, no, that's much better. Thanks, Betsy.
Text, confidentiality.
In our work, it is really important that we protect the confidentiality of the individuals that we're talking about. So really being aware of where our team members are and having these conversations, I think, prior to the meeting is also really important. So reminding them that they need to be in a space where there are no other people around, and if so, maybe they need to be using headphones, or they need to find an alternative space in their office or wherever they're having their meeting.
And then we're also looking at, what are the other platform measures that may be set up, the features that the platform that you're using has. Does it have a waiting room? Do you have the ability to dismiss or kick somebody out of a meeting? The chat function.
So I'm seeing a name that I am not familiar with. Dorothy Fillmore, can you please identify yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry, Betsy, that's me, Lisa, the Assistant District Attorney's Office. I forgot to change things up. How do I do that again?
You know what? I will change it for you, okay? I got it. All right. There we go. We're all set.
Thanks.
Text, connectivity issues.
When I'm thinking about the connectivity issues that we may run into in the middle of a meeting, I think about somebody forgetting to unmute themselves when they're about to speak, somebody's camera freezing or their connection freezing. Maybe somebody's Wi-Fi pops out and they need to jump off and then try to re-engage.
Lisa, I see your camera is freezing up occasionally. If you can hear me, you might want to turn off your camera or even jump out of the meeting and try rejoining it. If you find that doesn't work, you can also call in too if you want. I'm going to put the information in the chat, okay?
That sounds good. I'll start with turning off my video and see how that goes.
Okay, there we go.
One of the little tricks that I learned early on was to make sure that I had the email with the Zoom or the platform invite along with the call-in number, so that if somebody did pop off, I could shoot them a really quick email, and that information was handy as opposed to trying to scroll through all of the emails and where is that invite? So that was really helpful too.
Text, maximizing participation.
How do I ensure that both my in-person attendees and my virtual attendees both feel as if they are able to engage and participate equally? And so really what we're looking for is trying to encourage things both within the room and within the platform. And so as a coordinator, I'm no longer just working in one space. I'm working in two spaces. And so that may look like if we have some people that are having side conversations in the room, we might be encouraging people to just, a quick reminder, I'm going to ask you to hold off for right now because it's really disruptive for our conversation. Sometimes it interrupts some of the ability for the virtual participants to hear.
I'm going to interrupt for just a second here and just remind everybody that it's really helpful to have just one conversation going at a time so that we can really hear what each one has to say. So if you don't mind, I'm going to actually have Lindsay and Lisa. I heard both of you. And if anybody else has something to say, you can just raise your hand. There's like a little bar on the bottom for reactions, and you can do your hand. But I will start with Lindsay, and then I'll hear from Lisa, and then Grace, I'll have you go after Lisa, okay?
One thing I like to consider when I'm doing the hybrid meeting is encouraging our virtual participants to have their camera on, because I think that really allows for a little bit more interaction. And you can also read their faces a little bit better. It's when you're in person, you can totally see people's body language and how they're responding to what's being shared. And if their camera is on, and you can kind of read what the facial expressions are saying, and that can draw attention too, that you might need to address it, or you might need to say it again, or explain something a little bit more thoroughly.
A consideration that we have to kind of keep in mind as coordinators is I've had a lot of team members that don't actually have access to cameras as well. One of the things that I do if somebody's camera is off or if they're calling in by phone, I like to make sure that I'm using their name before I'm asking them a specific question so that they kind of call themselves to attention in case they're not paying attention. I hope everyone is deeply engaged and participating, but we all know it happens. We've all been distracted.
Text, use of chat function.
One of the virtual platform features I think that is really beneficial for coordinators is the chat function. It is a great way for our virtual folks to feel like they can be a part of that conversation, especially if they're having connectivity issues, if their camera's not on or whatever, but they can put their information into the chat. And then determining, I think also, how to monitor the chat during the meeting is an important piece. So as the coordinator, are you going to be doing the monitoring of the chat and the admitting of folks and the note taking, or will you be able to have an assistant or a co-coordinator that can do the monitoring of the chat and determining when to interrupt? Is this something that comes immediately as the chat comes in? Is it something that we wait to discuss after a case presentation?
Oh, I see that Lindsay added a comment in the chat. Lindsay says we can have Meals on Wheels check in, and that definitely can be activated. Lindsay, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think that we can also have somebody from our office swing by and check on Miss Ra
if somebody puts something in the chat, it may not necessarily be how they would explain it out loud. And so I may be reading for those who are in the room what the chat said, and then inviting that virtual participant if they have anything to add. So I want them to enhance that point, whether it's an aspect of the case, a recommendation, or something that they can offer. I want them to enhance that so that we can fully understand what they're trying to get across to us.
A really important thing to remember when using the chat feature is the type of information that we put in there. So it's great to share a website or a link to something, but we have to be really careful not to be putting any health information or identifying information, because we always have to keep in mind the confidentiality policy.
Text coordinator technology difficulties.
One of the things, especially with the virtual participation, is considering setting up a co-host for the meeting. That is really helpful, because if you end up losing your connection, let's say you're in the room and you lose that connection, whoever is virtually participating that you've made that co-host still has the ability to carry the meeting on and the conversation on.
So I think with this case, we need to really look at the potential for financial exploitation.
I'm just gonna pause you for a moment. It looks like we lost Betsy and the other folks that were in person. So I will step into the role. I'll take notes until Betsy's able to rejoin, or I can fill her in after. So why don't you continue? Didn't mean to interrupt.
So what I was saying is that I think
Text summary pre-meeting setup.
Plan for room setup to maximize in-person and virtual participation. Conduct a video and audio test to ensure that everyone can be seen and heard.
Text confidentiality.
Formalize a plan for obtaining confidentiality forms for virtual attendees. Utilize the platform's security features to support meeting confidentiality. Utilize the rename feature to identify phone and virtual participants by their correct name.
Text connectivity concerns.
Provide alternative means for virtual participation. For example, dial in by phone, exit and re-enter meeting, or turning off the camera. Provide ready access to the call-in number.
Text maximizing participation.
Encourage virtual attendees to use the platform functions. Ensure that members do not engage in side conversations or multiple conversations at one time. Activate the mute function for those not speaking.
Text maximizing the chat function.
Monitor the chat regularly. Have a member assist with monitoring the chat. Read out the comments, and where useful, invite members to explain and provide context to their chat entries.
Text coordinator experiencing technology difficulties.
Have a contingency plan to either conduct the discussion offline or have someone else take over the facilitation. Remember, the overarching goals of navigating technology are not to fix the issues, but to facilitate setup in a way that optimizes participation for both in-person and virtual participants. Focus on ensuring that connectivity and technology concerns are kept to a minimum. Offer alternatives to participants experiencing issues so that they can continue to participate.
A credits page listing the following logos. Weill Cornell Medicine's New York City Elder Abuse Center. Lifespan of Greater Rochester. Red Wind Consulting. University of Southern California's Keck School of Medicine / National Center on Elder Abuse and National Clearinghouse on Abuse in Later Life. A disclaimer statement is also included.